You are listening to Any Given Sunday, a part of the Dead End Podcast Network. Please subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, and all other podcasting services. Please make sure you check out Dead End Hip Hop, Dead End Sports, Dead End Gaming, Is the Mic Still On, Chris Platt's Strictly Hip Hop and Hoops Talk, and a host of other shows on our podcast network. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show. For Sunday, April 14th, 2019, this is Any Given Sunday. I'm your host, Manny Brown. What's up, everyone? Glad to be back on the show. Sorry for no podcast last week. As you guys know, I was in the great state of New York / New Jersey. Enjoying the WrestleMania festivities. So I'll get into that as we move along here today. Hopefully you guys had a happy, safe, blessed week. A better week than I had, of course, as you guys know. If you follow me on Twitter and Snapchat and Instagram, you guys know the hellacious week that United Airlines put me through. I will not leave this podcast without talking about how horrible United Airlines is. So I'll definitely get into that here shortly. My guest this week is Dalbin Osorio. He is a contributor, writer, podcaster on the Turn On Jets podcast and digital network. You can find him on there. He is a co-host of What's Your Point and Draft Season, all which are available anywhere you can find podcasts for free, as well as on the Turn On Jets podcast network. He's a great guy. Been following each other for a while, been covering his work for a while, and just wanted to have him on the show. Our schedules haven't been able to line up, but we finally were able to get something set up this weekend. And yeah, man, I think you guys will definitely enjoy that interview that I had with him here shortly. It's really dope. He's a really dope guy, really insightful, smart, just a dope guy. I think he's a great guest, a great get. So I hope you guys enjoy that conversation, man. But as far as me, man, I feel like I've been out of it. It's weird because like when you don't do a podcast for a week, it feels like you almost miss everything. The last show we had, obviously we had Cameron on the show, and shout out to Cameron for joining me again on the podcast. And that was actually a well received, and the reception I've gotten for that show has been amazing. So shout out to Cam and shout out to everybody that sent me messages and just feedback on that show, man. It's been really, really, really dope to see so many people like the show. So definitely appreciate it. But yeah, man, I feel like since the last time we did a podcast, I feel like I've missed so much. Obviously, the start of the NBA playoffs has began. The Major League Baseball regular season has begun. We won't get into Duke, but the college basketball season has ended. Is Virginia one of the luckiest national champions to ever win a national championship? Think about it. Like, think about how many times Virginia should have, like, legit have lost that tournament. Like, they could have easily lost to Oregon. They should have lost to Purdue. They should have lost to Auburn. And hell, even I can make an argument even against Texas Tech, they should have lost. But yeah, shout out to Virginia, man. That little school in Blacksburg, or in Charlottesville, wherever they're located, whatever little Timbuktu town they're located. Shout out to them. They won a national championship. Congrats to them. Yeah, the Major League Baseball season is on and rocking. We'll definitely get into the Major League Baseball season next week. I have a couple guests that I have in mind for next week's show. We're going to get into the Major League Baseball and the start of the season and everything that we need to know there. So far, so good. Some teams that are off to some struggles that are surprising. I think the Red Sox have surprised a lot of people in the way that they've struggled. Their pitching has been terrible. I'm not worried about the Red Sox. I think the Red Sox, I mean, they were due. I mean, it was just law of averages that the Red Sox were going to have a little bit of a slow start, a little bit of a World Series hangover. They played so well for so long last year that you just had to know that this year was just going to be a come down. I still have confidence in them. I still love the manager. I still love that team. I think the pitching is still pretty good, and I know those guys didn't pitch a lot in spring training, so that's been used as the narrative of sorts to explain the slow start. I still have confidence that the Red Sox will figure it out. The Yankees are off to a slow start as well. They've had a ton of injuries, and we'll never cry tears of sorrow for the Yankees or Yankee fans, but they're off to a little bit of a slow start. I think the team that I would be the most concerned about if I'm a fan of them is the Cubs. I don't love the way the Cubs have looked. I don't love the way the Cubs have played. I didn't like the Cubs all going into the offseason. I didn't understand how so many people had picked the Cubs to go make it back to a World Series, and so many people were high on the Cubs. I'm like, they really didn't improve that team from last year. That team collapsed late last year. They really didn't improve them. They still need a bullpen. Their bullpen is terrible, and I don't even love their rotation. Lester's still good, but eventually Lester's going to show his age. Cole Hamels is not the pitcher he used to be, and then Quintana is Quintana. He's a nice pitcher, but he's on a really great team. He's a number 3, number 4 starter, and Kendricks is okay, and Darvish has been another waste of money. I mean, I love Theo. And Theo's the GOAT, but damn, Theo has a lot of L's on his resume when it comes to free agency. He does. I mean, I still can't forgive Theo for that contract he gave Jason Hayward. Like, this man gave Jason Hayward $184 million, bro. Like, man. Theo gets a pass, bro. Because if Theo did not have those two important championships, well, I should say two with the Red Sox and one with the Cubs. If he didn't have those two championships, mainly though, the 04 Red Sox and then the 2016 Cubs, like, Theo would be getting flamed in Chicago. Because some of those free agent acquisitions have not been great. Tyler Chatwood hasn't been great. Jason Hayward, we talked about. And Yu Darvish is the next in line. He's been fucking terrible. And I told you guys this on the old iteration of the show, that I thought that contract was terrible. Yu Darvish? Did Theo not watch the World Series that year? Did he not watch how Yu Darvish basically, if you had to assign blame for why the Dodgers lost to the Astros, Yu Darvish would probably be number one. I mean, he was non-competitive in the two games he started. Non-competitive. I would have never given Yu Darvish that money, but hey, whatever. In Theo's imminent wisdom, he saw something that we didn't. So we'll whatever. But the Cubs are off to a slow start. I would be a little concerned if I'm a Cubs fan. Everything else is pretty much still too early to call. I mean, the Rays are off to a good start. My Mets have looked pretty good. I'm trying to keep my excitement with the Mets measured, because obviously we know what happened last year. They started out 11-1. I thought that last year was going to be one of those magical years, and it just completely blew up in our faces. And as you know, being a Met fan, we expect the worst at any moment. So today could be the day, or last night could have been the start of a 12-game losing streak and the season's over. So I'm just trying to keep my expectations on the Mets tempered and measured. And I'll just say we've played really well. I like the way we've looked. The pitching's still coming around a little slowly, but for the most part, I think that we've played very well. The offense has been great. But yeah, man, like I said, I'm not going to get too excited. I'm not going to come on here and wax poetic about how great the Mets are. I'm going to keep that shit tabled for another day. I'm at least let them get through April. If they get through April relatively healthy, and relatively well playing, then we'll start to talk, but right now I'm not going to get excited about the Mets. They got to show me something. After 11-1 last year and then basically collapsing for 2 months, like, I got to wait and see with the Mets. That's just me. I got to wait and see. But yeah, so the Mets are playing well. Yankees, Red Sox off the slow starts. The Cubs I'd be concerned about. Mariners, until this weekend, we're playing at an all-time level. They've kind of come back down to earth a little bit. The Astros have beat them up the last couple nights, but, so we'll see if the Mariners, for our local fans, are legit. Got to think that they're eventually going to come back down to the pack, right? I mean, the Mariners are supposed to be an in-between team rebuilding, so I don't think the Mariners are going to stay hot. I think they had their run. I think they're starting to come back to the pack a little bit now that the Astros have kind of put them in their place the last 2 nights. So we'll see. But that's it with the world of baseball, man. And then of course the NBA playoffs. Yesterday was a good sign for the NBA, because I was worried about the NBA. First time with no LeBron in the playoffs in 16 years. I think the ratings are going to take a little bit of a hit. But yesterday you had some good basketball. You really had some good basketball yesterday. Outside of the Warriors, Clippers game, and I don't know anybody who thought that was going to be a competitive series. I mean, please, the Warriors are not going to lose to the Clippers. The Clippers are not touching the Warriors. I mean, the Clippers will be lucky that they get a game in that series. Patrick Beverley can do all the antics he wants, but at the end of the day, the Warriors are just too much of a well-oiled machine. The Clippers are not touching them. But I thought yesterday was a good game, a good day of basketball for the NBA. I mean, I thought they had, they had 3 really good games. I think the one that stands out the most obviously is that Toronto Raptors Orlando Magic game. That was a hell of a game. That was a great playoff game. Back and forth, swings, changing leads, swing of emotions, back and forth. I just love that game. And Orlando pulled it out. I actually thought Orlando was going to be in trouble in that game. I thought when Toronto, took the lead late in the fourth quarter there, I thought Toronto was going to find a way to pull it out. They didn't. And that's the thing about Toronto, man. Same year, different year, same results. A little bit of a different roster, different coach, but the same thing with Toronto. There's just something about that team that they're just missing something. I don't know what it is. I can never get fully on board with the Raptors. It's just something about that team that I just don't love in big spots. I don't know if they're just not built for playoff competition. I just don't know what it is. I just don't love the Raptors. I really don't. A team like the Raptors, the level of experience that they have, the players that they have on that team, Siakam is great. Like, I love Pascal Siakam. I mean, the dude is a beast. Leonard, I have my issues with Leonard, but Leonard's great. For the amount of talent and the experience that team has, they should not lose to the Orlando Magic the way that they did last night. I mean, they just shouldn't. They just shouldn't. Look, the Magic played well. The Magic are a nice story. They've played really well since the All-Star break, but, the Raptors should run through them. And they might still, they might win the next 4 games. They might win the next 4 games and sweep Orlando after last night. But, if I'm a Raptors fan, I'd be concerned. I would just say that. I'd be concerned that the Raptors are up to their old tricks again. You can't blame LeBron this year. You can't blame LeBron this year. And you can't put all the blame on DeMar DeRozan. He's not playing on your team anymore. So, it can't just be, we're running up against LeBron and DeMar DeRozan's not a superstar. Those angles can't be used anymore. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Raptors respond in game 2. But that was a hell of a game. Obviously the Sixers embarrassed themselves. That's another team that I never trust. I don't trust the coach. I don't trust Embiid. I don't trust Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons gets a pass. As a Laker fan, everybody always likes to joke about Lonzo and he can't shoot and he's a terrible offensive player and blah, 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 blah. And Lonzo this and Lonzo that. To me, Ben Simmons has gotten a pass for a while now. And I think he's finally starting to kind of get ripped, but Ben Simmons did not play great. Did not play great again in the playoffs. I would be a little worried if I'm a Sixers fan as well, that Ben Simmons, this has now become a trend now with Ben Simmons. He didn't play well last year, and he played well in the Miami series for the most part. But against the Celtics last year, he didn't play well. And then this year, to start out, he didn't play well against the fucking Nets. And I would be a little concerned. And it's time that Ben Simmons now starts getting fucking ripped. Ben Simmons, that team has a lot to say. The Sixers, Embiid and Simmons, they have a lot to say. Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid talk like they've won 4 championships, and they ain't done shit. They haven't done a goddamn thing. And if they don't get their acts together, the Nets are going to beat their asses in this series. I guarantee you that. Because the Nets are not intimidated. The Nets have a really good team. Young, upstart. They're not afraid of the moment. They actually, just from watching that game, I actually think the Nets feel like they could play with Philly. They're not intimidated by them. And if they don't get their acts together, they're going to find themselves home a lot earlier than they had expected. So Philly better watch out. I don't care about the cell phone thing. I mean, it is what it is. It's a bad look if you don't understand why it's a big deal. Look, you can't be losing a game at home in the playoffs where you've basically been blown out the entire game and a cell phone comes out on the bench. You can't have that. Is it a big deal? Is it an international incident? Do we need an act of Congress involved, to get involved? No, it's not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. If the Sixers were up by 30, I don't think it would be as huge of a deal, but you can't lose a playoff game at home when you're a 3 seed, the way that they lost it and the cell phone comes out on the bench area. It just can't, whether you want to believe that, Amir Johnson's daughter was sick and they were just talking, checking up on updates for her, whatever. I'm not there. You're not there. We're not all there. Who knows? We got to take them at their word still. You can't do that. You can't do that. And Joel Embiid needs to know better. He's the leader of that team. He's the face of that franchise. You got to know better. You got to know better. You got to know better. Again, is it a huge deal? Is it a big deal? No, it's not. It's not. In the grand scheme of things, it's not. If they lose this series, is it going to be because they pulled out a cell phone in game 1 while they were getting blown out? No. But it's just something that just can't happen. It can't happen. You can't be smiling on the bench when you're being blown out by 15. You can't be smiling on the bench pulling out cell phones when you're losing a game to a 6 seed, a team that you have no business losing to. So 2 teams that would instantly are driving the narrative in the playoffs early on is the Sixers and the Raptors. And I would be concerned if I'm a fan of both those teams. I really would be. I would be concerned. I was not impressed yesterday by what I saw about both those teams. And I don't want to hear about, playoffs. And again, they may still win those series, and I still expect them both to win those series. But if I'm a fan of either one of those teams, I would be a little concerned going deep into these playoffs with those teams. Because I just don't think Philly's that good. They have talent, but there's something about them that they don't mesh. They haven't meshed well. Embiid is hurt. And Simmons has not played well. And again, it's time to start taking Embiid to task, yo. Like, for real, let's start killing Joel Embiid. Or not Joel Embiid. Let's start taking Ben Simmons to task. And let's start killing him. He has not played well. And again, after the game, if you boo us, you're on their side. Shut up. Shut up. Shut the fuck up. Shut up. First of all, somebody should tell him, Ben, that's a battle you're not going to win. You're not going to take on the fans and you think you're going to win that. You're not winning that. Those fans had every right to boo that performance yesterday by the Sixers. They had every right to boo. And then what do we say about Kyle Lowry? Like, I feel like Kyle Lowry is almost too much of a punching bag at this point now. Like, what do you say about Kyle Lowry now at this point? That hasn't been said. The fact that Kyle Lowry makes $33 million a year, it's sickening. It's sickening. Kyle Lowry, I've said it year in, year out. It feels like I've been saying this for like the last 5 years now. No team, I repeat, no team with Kyle Lowry as their starting point guard is ever going to win an NBA championship. They should have traded. I feel like they should have traded him before they should have traded DeRozan. And I'm not a big DeRozan fan, but he's as much been a problem for that team and that franchise as DeMar DeRozan ever was. He's just not that good. He's a nice, solid NBA player. He's a good player, very good player. But he's just one of those guys that when the lights are on bright, when the calendar turns to April, I'd never trust. And I'm sure he'll play better in game 2. I'm sure he'll play better. He'll come out and, he'll do the prototypical Kyle Lowry thing. He'll come out game 2, he'll score 35 points, have 8 to 9 assists, and everybody will be like, oh, you see Kyle Lowry? And you'll be sucked into believing that Kyle Lowry now has put all his playoff woes behind him. And then what happens? Game 3, game 4, he'll fall apart again, or the next series he'll fall apart again. It's just typical Kyle Lowry. Typical Kyle Lowry. A guy that makes $33 million a year. I need to know who his agent is. I swear I need to know who his agent is. Because that man is a real MVP. The fact that he's been able to finesse the Raptors out of that much money over the last few years is just amazing to me. It really is. It's just amazing to me. I'm not even going to get into, I just not going to even continue with Kyle Lowry because he's too easy at this point to pick on. He's too easy. He's too easy to pick on at this point. Like, what else do you say about Kyle Lowry that hasn't been said? He's a choke artist. He's been a choke artist. And the fact that he's getting $33 million is just something about it that just doesn't, yeah. So I'm glad to see that the Raptors are up to their old tricks again. It's wonderful. And then the Spurs pulled out a tough road win last night against Denver. The Spurs do what the Spurs do. They figure out a way to win in the playoffs. And, I still don't have high hopes for them. I think this team is not as good as they used to be, obviously. I still expect Denver to win this series, but I don't know. I think the Spurs believe. I think the Spurs are confident. I think the Spurs feel like they have the experience over Denver. I'd be a little concerned if I'm a Denver fan just because they're young. They've never been in this situation before. The interesting thing with Denver is it's like usually there's a natural progression with teams as they advance into the playoffs. Like a team like Denver would start out as maybe a 7th seed or an 8th seed in the playoffs, gain a little experience, and then the next year they have that 50+ win trajectory where, they're a 2 seed and they're expected now to take on the next step. Denver really went from a team that was the 9th seed last year, a team that barely missed the playoffs, to now being a 2 seed. That's a huge jump. That's a huge jump in wins. That's a huge jump in productivity. And it's also a huge jump in expectation. Now, Denver can't just look at it like, we're a bunch of young guys. We don't know what we're doing. We're just happy to be here. And, oh, shoot, if we win, great. Like, yay. Like, no, like you're a 2 seed. You won 50+ games. Like, you're expected now to, at the very least, get to a conference semifinal. So it's going to be interesting to see Denver. I would be very concerned if I'm a Denver fan. I shouldn't say that. I'd be concerned. I wouldn't be very concerned because I still think they'll beat the Spurs. I just think talent-wise, I just think they'll just have more talent than the Spurs right now. But we'll see. Spurs, if nothing else, the Spurs are going to play hard. I think the Spurs know that they've got this team in the experience factor, and I think the Spurs are going to play hard. They're going to play well. They match up well against the Nuggets. So I would be somewhat concerned, but I still think the Nuggets will pull it out. But if yesterday was any indication, it definitely shows me that the Spurs are going to be in this series. I expect this series to be long. I could definitely see this series being 6 games. As far as everything else in the NBA playoffs, look, I don't do NBA playoff previews. I've done them the last few years, but this year, barring an act of God or barring something crazy happening, the Warriors are going to repeat as champions. Let's be honest. We know this now, right? We know this now. I know some of my friends. I know some of you out there have some faint hopes that maybe the Rockets will be able to do it, especially if they meet them in the second round this year. Blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry. No, you're going to have to convince me that the Rockets are going to be, first of all, they're not as good as they were last year. They're just not. And now instead of meeting them in the conference finals, you're meeting them in the conference semis and you don't have home field advantage. So, hey, Believe that if you will. For those of you out there, you know who you are that believe the Rockets are destined to be champions this year. I don't see it. So barring an act of God or an injury or something crazy happening or a complete utter meltdown in a series, I just don't see the Warriors losing. Nobody in the West is beating them. And then nobody in the East is beating them, really, honestly. I don't think though. Matter of fact, I'll say this. I think the Warriors will play 1 6-game series in this entire playoffs. That's it. I don't think they'll play a 6-game series in this round, obviously. I don't think they'll play a 6-game series in next round. I'm calling it right now. I don't think they'll play 6 games against the Rockets next round. And that's if the Rockets gets past the Jazz. There's no guarantee they'll get past the Jazz either. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. But I don't think they'll play a 6-game in the next series. And in the conference semis against most likely Portland, because I think Portland's going to beat Oklahoma City. They may play a 6-game series. Maybe, just maybe. Even that one, I'm not sure. I don't think they'll play a 6-game series in the entire Western Conference. And then in the NBA Finals, they might play a 6-game series just because I have respect for Boston, who I would pick to get out of the East. The Marcus Smart injury does scare me, though. I think that's a huge injury. That's low key a big time injury for them. But they're so deep. They have so many guys that I think they can possibly withstand. Although Marcus Smart does so many things for that team, so many things that don't get measured on the stat sheet that would concern me. But I think they still have enough talent where they can get past it. But that would be my pick to get out of the East is the Celtics still. We'll see what the Bucks do. I'm interested to see what they do and how they perform with all the pressure on them now. Or I wouldn't say pressure, but added eyes and added expectations on them. They're similar. They're similar to me to Denver, although they had the trajectory that I talked about. Milwaukee was a 7th or an 8th seed for a couple years, and then they took that leap this year into being a top seed. So they've at least had some playoff experience. So I'm not as concerned with Milwaukee as I am with Denver, but they're kind of in a similar boat to Denver. But that would be my team coming out of the East, and the Warriors and the Celtics. It'd be a good series. That would probably be the 6-game series they'd play is against the Celtics. If they played the Sixers, I don't think first of all, I don't have confidence that the Sixers are going to beat the Nets. So against the Warriors, I definitely have no confidence. So that wouldn't be a 6-game series. Against the Raptors, hell no. And even against the Bucks, I don't think so. The only team that's going to give them a real challenge to me in an NBA final is the Celtics. That's it. And even that one's questionable to go 5 or to go 6. So yeah, man, an act of God is what's going to take. So, but yeah, that's my mini NBA preview. Shout out to Tiger Woods. He's back. Tiger is back. He just won the Masters. His first major championship since 2008, I believe. 2008, first major championship. Yeah, it's amazing. Tiger's been through a lot. I for one started to lose hope in Tiger Woods. I'm like, man, he's got 14 majors. He needs 6 more to pass, Nicholas. So we'll see. And I kept saying, we'll see. But I always had faith that he'd figure it out. And then it's gotten to a point where I was like, man, with the surgeries, with the injuries, he's 41 years old now. Who knows if he's ever going to get back to that level. So I started losing hope in Tiger, but he's looked good. Last year he had a really good year. So there was a lot of expectation for Tiger going into this year. If he stays healthy, if he continues to play the way that he's playing, that he could possibly win one. I don't think anybody expected the Masters, but here we are. He won the Masters. So salute to Tiger Woods. Salute to him, man. Golf needs it. Golf needs it in the worst way possible. They've got guys like, Dustin Johnson and Spieth and, guys that can, that are great players, but they don't move the needle. They're not guys that are going to make me and, I'm a casual golf fan. Like I watch the majors, but I'm not a golf fan that goes out there and, plays the game every day and, follows the sport on a day by day basis, 365 days a year. I'm a casual observer. Like I know what's going on. I know what's going on in all the major championships, tours and I keep an eye on the sport, but I'm not there every day. I'll be honest. But guys like Dustin Johnson, Spieth, McIlroy, who's tremendously overrated, those guys don't move the needle. They're great players, they're talented, but they're not guys that move the needle. They don't move the needle in the way Tiger does. And that's for a variety of reasons. So the sport definitely needs, if you don't think executives on CBS and the PGA are just fucking clapping right now, like ecstatic as they can be right now, then you're crazy. They're happy as fuck right now that Tiger Woods is back and that he won a major. Cause now this carries the sport into the summer with the US Open, with the British Open, the PGA championships. I mean, this carries the sport now for the next few months. Cause now everybody's going to say, well, if Tiger got the Masters, how well is he going to do in the US Open? How well is he going to do in the British Open? How well, there's no Ryder Cup this year. How well is he going to do in the PGA championship? Like, this carries the sport now for the next couple months. So yeah, shout out to Tiger, man. Shout out to Tiger. It's glad to have him back. As a sports fan, it's glad to have him back winning major championships. He drives the narrative. He moves the needle. And I honestly think that he's more humble. He's actually he's a guy that you could root for more now that he's actually gone through the struggles, that he's gone through the ups and ups. The ups and downs, than in the past when he was just so dominant and he just seemed like a fucking robot. Like it just did, cause that was my issue with Tiger. It was like, yo, is he someone that you just can relate to? You know what I mean? Is he someone that he doesn't almost seem human. He's so fucking good. He was that much better than everybody else at his peak that, it was almost kind of hard to get into him because it's like, damn, this dude is almost too good. It's like, there's no vulnerability there with Tiger. And I think the last decade, almost a decade since the struggles really began, he's had to humble himself a little bit. So I think it's going to be interesting how the golf world and fans alike respond to him. If Twitter and the sports world now is anything to take notice of, the reception of it has been great and, good for Tiger Woods and good for golf, man. And good for sports, because I think we needed Tiger Woods back. So shout out to Tiger Woods, man. Shout out to Tiger Woods. As far as my WrestleMania experience, man, WrestleMania weekend last weekend, it was great, man. First and foremost, I got to see some family. So it's always great to be back home, be with family. Got to go back home to Brooklyn, it's always great. It's always awesome. The weather was weird as fuck. Everybody talks about places and how different places are weird as fuck. Dog, the weather in New York is so fucking crazy. So the day I got there, I left here Thursday night. I took a red eye, got to New Jersey because I flew into Newark. I got to New Jersey at, basically 7 a.m. While I, get off the plane, get my bags, get my rental, all that. I leave the airport. So by the time I get to my cousin's house, it's about 8:45, 9 a.m. in the morning. And it's 40 degrees outside. It's cold. And mind you, we've been having unseasonably warm weather here in the Pacific Northwest for the 2 weeks leading up to when I left last Thursday. So, for like 2.5, 3 weeks almost, we've had weather in the 60s, outside of like maybe 1 day or 2 days, it rained. It's been sunny. It's been sunny throughout. So the weather's been great up here. So of course I go back to New York and it's rainy, it's cold, wet, 40 degrees. So that whole day is just crap. And I go to NXT TakeOver and at the Barclays. First time being at the Barclays, I was impressed with the arena. Great arena. So obviously we go to NXT TakeOver. TakeOver is a great show. Awesome show. Probably the show of the weekend. I didn't do Wale Mania. I didn't do some of the indie shows. I didn't do the New Japan, the G1 show on Saturday night. I heard that show was pretty good. But from the two shows, obviously TakeOver was probably the better show. But after that, after the night was over or whatever, and just being out in the weather, being out in the streets and just chilling and hanging out. I mean, it was fucking freezing out. I think the temperatures got down to about 37. There was sleet in some areas. So it was just nasty. Of course, Saturday, it's 60 or 60. I think it was like 64, 65, somewhere around that, mid 60s. Sunny, nice day all around. So that's that. Then Sunday, the day of Mania. It starts out a beautiful day. Like, cause, my cousin lives in Old Bridge, New Jersey. So that's central Jersey. And obviously, Maine is at MetLife. So that's northern New Jersey, right? So central New Jersey is beautiful, nice, warm. It feels great. There was a chance of showers later on in the night. So we knew that there was an opportunity for rain to come. So, but the weather was really nice, right? As soon as I get on the road, I start driving, get up to MetLife. And the weather just completely, like, if Old Bridge was like 67, I swear by the time I got to MetLife, it had dropped like 6-7 degrees. Like it was 60 and it would continue to drop throughout the day and night. So it got cold as I got to MetLife. And then, of course, throughout Mania, it was cold. And yeah, it just got colder as the night went on. And then, of course, it rained. Mania got lucky because the showers literally held off. Mania ended like at 12:30, something like that. 12:25, I think was in the last bell between the pyro and everything going off. So about 12:30, 12:35-ish. Mania was over and it started raining like literally like by 12:50. 12:50 is when I started seeing raindrops on my windshield. Like it was like, okay, this is happening. So the weather was crazy. The one thing that I got to say, man, Mania is too fucking long. It's just too, like, I love going to Mania. It's an experience. Obviously I'm a wrestling fan and it's great. My friends and I go and it's always a good time, but Mania is too fucking long. I mean, the company really has to do something about this now. Like it's ridiculously too long. Like I got to MetLife. I left early, so I got to MetLife about 4:45. Pre-show started at 5:30. So parking, waiting for my friend to get there and all that, buying merch. So we knew we were going to miss most of the pre-show. I'm sorry, I didn't care to watch, the tag team championships, the Raw tag team championships and, the women's battle royal and shit like that. I'm sorry. They had no interest in it. Sorry. So by the time we went into the actual stadium, food and whatnot got seated, it was like 6:30. And we were just in time for the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. So think about it now. For me, some people, there was a lot of people. It was almost half full at 5:30 to start the pre-show, right? But for me, I'm just only speaking for me. 6:30. I just mentioned that the show was over at 12:30. That's 6 hours going on 7. In total, the show was 7 hours long, bro. 7 hours. That's too much. And in the area that I was sitting, there were a lot of kids and families, and a lot of those kids and families left. They left like way before the main event, because it was the main event, then it was the Triple H Batista match. Was it? I forgot. It's been a week already and I've forgotten the order, but the 3 matches to close the show were the Kurt Angle match with Baron Corbin, and then it was the Batista Triple H match. And then obviously it was the Ronda, the triple threat match, right? So in between the Kurt Angle and Batista matches, a lot of the families started leaving. It was too much, and I don't blame them. I got kids at home. I didn't take my son. He would have loved to go, but I knew it's too long, and it's outdoors. It's cold. Like, it's too much. 7 hours is too much for anything, any entertainment medium. But it's too much for a fucking wrestling show. It's too damn much. So WWE really has to address this. Like, I know they want to get everybody on the show, but this is ridiculous now. This is getting stupid. They can't have these shows go this long. It's dumb. It's too much. It's too much. And they're not even thinking about the fans that, that stayed and made it a whole WrestleMania weekend. They're not thinking about the fans that went to Wally Mania, the fans that went to all the indie shows around in the areas on Thursday, Friday, the people that went to NXT, the people that went to the Hall of Fame on Saturday night, the people that went to G1, the people that, obviously all of Mania, and then the people that are still going to SmackDown and Raw the next 2 nights. Think about it. That's almost, That's 20 plus hours? 20 plus hours of wrestling. That's too damn much. It's too damn much. So WWE really needs to address it. And then, of course, I didn't check the Torch, or I didn't check none of the major news outlets. It was big news locally when I was in Jersey, but so WWE failed to let NJ Transit know that the show was going to run long. I'm assuming NJ Transit had a kind of a ballpark figure that the show would be over right around like 11 or so. So, by the time the show was over, 12:30, almost 1 o'clock, the drivers, the train operators, the conductors, the bus drivers, etc., they had reached their peak hours. So by that point, there were no trains, no buses available to bus and train people back to their locations in the city. So thousands of people were left out in the rain, in the cold, and it was cold and it was fucking raining. So it was miserable. You had literally thousands of people out with no transportation. And of course, the WWE took responsibility, which I'm actually surprised they actually took responsibility. They said, it was our fault, our bad. We didn't notify people, and we'll do a better job. So yeah, WWE really needs to do something about this, man. The length of the shows, it's too much. It's too damn long. It's too much. It's too damn long. It's ridiculously long. So, but overall, it was a great show. It was I would grade Mania as a B+. It was a really good show. Obviously, the Kofi title change was the highlight of the night. The crowd went crazy. Some of you who follow me on social media seen the video I posted. The crowd went nuts. The building was rocking the entire match. Definitely behind Kofi. So that was the highlight of the show, I would say. Best match on the card, but it was a good show. Good show. Good Mania. Good solid Mania. I wouldn't put it in the upper echelon of Manias. It was a good show. Good Mania. Good Mania. Got what we wanted if you're a wrestling fan. I thought the Kurt Angle match was crap. The Roman Reigns McIntyre match was just like, I've never been in a stadium where it was 80,000 people in it and just 80,000 people were just could care less. They were just like, they weren't mean or snarky to the match. I mean, it wasn't your typical Roman Reigns match from like 5 months ago, but it was literally just indifference. So, but it was a good show. TakeOver was great show. So yeah, it was all in all, it was a great weekend. Great, and then of course that Monday. So another story on my weather, my weather. You guys know I love weather, so bear with me. Sorry. But the weather in New York, it was the hottest day of the year that day in the Northeast, in the area. So that day it got up to 82 degrees. So it was dope, man. And anytime you get 82 degrees in the city, it's always awesome. So, just got to ride around a little bit. Went through some of the old neighborhoods, Jersey City. I went into New York for a little bit. And it was a great time. Had fun. And then my horror story began. I'm not even going to get into the details of my horror story. Just know United Airlines is fucking trash. Do not ever fly United Airlines. If you take anything from this podcast today, between me and Dalbin, my Mania recap, just recapping all the sport. Like, if you take anything from this podcast, take this. United Airlines is fucking trash. They're terrible. Awful. How have they existed for so long as an airline and provided just crappy service is beyond me. It's beyond me. It literally is beyond me. I don't even want to go through everything that happened on that whole experience. Just know I was on a flight that boarded twice, off-boarded off the plane twice, delayed 3 times, and then eventually canceled. And then my rebooked flight the next day was delayed an hour. And the entire process was ill communicated, poor customer service throughout, lack of information. It was terrible. So United Airlines, I know I don't do fouls of the week anymore, but y'all get a fucking foul. Like, terrible. I hate United Airlines. And I already told my wife, I'm like, I don't care what the occasion is. I don't care whether it's for leisure, whether it's for business, whether it's for family emergencies. I don't care what it is. I will drive before I fly United. I don't care if they got the cheapest fucking flight imaginable. I will drive I will walk. I will take Greyhound before I do another United flight. That's real. So United Airlines, y'all are on my shit list, and I'm still battling with them to get the compensation. Cause I called them and I was like, yo, cause they are, and you know how they try to offer you like a little $200 travel voucher, like, oh, for your trouble and your terrible experience, here's $200. Like, no, $200. Like, I missed 2 days of work. I missed 2 days of work. I missed 2 days with my family. I was in an airport for close to 48 hours. Like, no, I'm sorry. No, that's not going to fly with me. I'm sorry. I'm still battling with them to try to get my proper compensation. So we'll see. But, United Airlines is trash, bro. So they're trash. But that's it for me rambling. After the break, we'll have Dalbin Osorio on the podcast, man. Like I said, I've been wanting to talk to this guy for a while and finally have him on. We'll talk about, all things Jets, recapping the offseason, previewing the draft, and then, of course, his background, his story. Very, very cool guy, very insightful guy with an interesting story, a background. So I hope you guys definitely enjoy it, man. It's going to be a great show. So, here's a couple words, and then we'll be back with Dalbin on the podcast. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back to the show. My guest this week is a guy I've been wanting to have on for a while now. We just haven't been able to get our schedules lined up. That's just the way the world works sometimes. But I'm glad he's finally on today. He is the co-host of Draft Season. He's a contributor for Turn On Jets digital site. If you're a Jets fan, it's probably the number one site to follow if you're a Jets fan. He contributes, writes articles and pieces on there, and then also hosts their What's Your Point podcast, a weekly debate show, and as well as the Draft Season podcast, which you'll be recording today, matter of fact. So you can listen to him on there. Mr. Dalbin, am I pronouncing your name right, bro? Dalbin?
Yes, sir. And actually, you know what? You are one of maybe 5 people in my life that have gotten it right.
Well, that's good because I'm terrible with names.
Yeah, I think we are off to a really good start because you got it right. Even Joe, Joe, who's our editor at Turn on the Jets, the first 2 months just absolutely butchered my name. But yeah, hey, I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm glad to be on.
Word. Well, Dalbin Osorio is here with us this week, and welcome, Dalbin. What's going on, man?
Thank you, man. Thank you. I'm good, man. Like you alluded to in the intro, we haven't been able to link up our schedules. That's probably the number one issue that impacts dads. So don't let moms think that it only impacts them when they want to hang out with their friends. But I'm super pumped to be on, man. Like I've listened to you for a while, and honestly, I'm always super humbled when people ask me to come on. So it's going to be a great show. So I'm really glad to be on with you.
No doubt, man. Like I told you offline, I've just been following your work for the last couple months. Just really checking out, because I've always followed Turn on Jets, just kind of read the pieces, but I recently just started checking out some of the podcasts, and I was impressed by your work. So I decided this is a guy I want to talk to. So yeah, man, we just that's how we do. You know what I mean? I find interesting people to talk to and try to have them on the show, man. So the pleasure's all mine, for real.
Thank you. Yeah, no, and I mean it's been a good run, man. Like I've been at TOJ now since 2011, and it was actually crazy because when I got brought on, it was myself, Connor Rogers, who's now with Bleacher Report, and then Cole Patterson, who was with ESPN for a while, and then The Ringer, and so it's interesting because they went on to actually take the Turn on the Jets experience and turn it into something big. That wasn't my path, right? Because I do social services and stuff like that, but we had gotten hired to just do the undrafted free agent pieces, right? Like it was just literally us sitting down and poring over film for days on end over guys that just hadn't gotten drafted. And then one day Joe was like, hey, do you want to be on the podcast this Friday or something like that? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And I'm now probably the most senior member of the site. Like I've been there long enough because Cole went on to go do different things, and Connor went on to Bleacher Report. And it's been great to see the site evolve from what was really strictly a written site when I first started to the digital monster that it is now. So it's been great.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how I found you guys initially too, is the undrafted free agents. Cause, usually after the draft, a lot of the activity with the undrafted free agents really picks up. So, right. I just happened to Google one day and just happened to find Turn on Jets, and there it was. So ever since then, I've been following the site on, so yeah, so it's dope. It's dope, man. I just want to say you guys do an amazing job, man. Keep it up.
Thank you for sure. I appreciate that.
But before we get into our beloved football team, I like to give my guests a little bit of time to kind of introduce themselves. Give a little insight on their background, who they are, how they got started. That you kind of alluded to that a little bit, but just kind of give the audience that may not be familiar with Dalbin. Who is Dalbin?
Yeah, sure, man. So like you mentioned, I've been at TOJ now. It's been 8 years and it's been great. Joe actually is essentially, Joe's one of my best friends, and he's become one of my best friends in the world, which is great. He was at my wedding. I was at his, and he, he's given me advice about life. So I ran for office last year down here in Montgomery County, Maryland. And Joe was my social media manager for my campaign. So again, that's the nature of our friendship. So that's been great. When I'm not having my heart broken by the New York Football Jets, I'm a therapist at a high school actually down here in Maryland, which I love. So I've been a social worker for a really long time. I've now entered the political arena. Like I said, I ran for office last year. I'm running for a high profile position down here now that is, council appointed, which is great. I've written a lot of stuff that's been published on The Root and just stuff about social justice. I'm really committed to social justice. I'm an organizer by trade. But right now, as my professional life, I work with high school students who have quote unquote emotional disturbances, which is just a fancy word that people slap on, kids of color because they think that kids of color are different. And so I've been doing that for a while now, and it's great, man, because I have a lot of kids who go through a lot of different things. And honestly, as for me, I grew up in the inner city in New York, and the people that saved my life were the people who were willing to sit there and talk to me for 15, 20 minutes, because by then the world had already written us off, as a person of color. It just happens naturally, right? And I find that the one thing that absolutely recharges my emotional capital is being able to help these kids get through what they go through. And then I'm able to talk to them about football, and I'm able to talk to them about wanting to be police officers, and I'm able to talk to them about wanting to be designers and et cetera, et cetera. And it's great. And it keeps me sane, man, because I have an 8-month-old, who probably doesn't let me sleep, although she's really great because she sleeps through the night, which is fantastic. But being a parent is hard, man. And it's hard when you see the things that a lot of our kids go through. So I'm able to write about the Jets and do podcasts about the Jets, and that gives me a release, but I'm also able to impact children's lives in a real positive way. So that's essentially me.
That's awesome, man. Just like to say thank you for that, because we need more people like that. Unfortunately, in the world, we don't have enough.
Thank you.
So it's amazing, man. I applaud you for that. That's not an easy path. That's not an easy job, and you do it, and it seems like you love it. So I applaud you, and I thank you for that, man. We definitely need more people like that in our inner cities, in our community, and everywhere to help not just kids of color,
yep.
but white kids, black kids, Hispanic kids,
yep.
Asian kids. I mean, every kid out there. There's a lot of kids out there with problems. So I applaud you for that, man. Definitely.
Thank you.
How did you get started in social service? Like, how did it become that? Like, was this something that you always wanted to do, or was it something that kind of developed over time as you got older, and just from your own personal experience, that's something that kind of was blossomed in you?
Well, so it's interesting, man, because I grew up without my dad. My dad wasn't in my life. I met my dad for the first time when I was 20. And so that was a life-shaping thing, because I didn't know what my dad was like. I had heard stories. He was the constant, let you down parent. And I had to learn how to manage those emotions, the emotions that came from that when I was a kid. And so when I was 20, my dad was working on a political campaign in New York for a guy who is now actually he's a congressman now. So he made it to Washington and, won his first election that my dad helped him. And now he's in Congress. And my mom had, called me on my cell phone when, during the days that we had flip phones. And she was like, do you want to meet your dad? And I was like, yeah, I would love to. And so I got in a cab, went to go meet him. And sure enough, when he heard that I was coming, he ran, like he left the area or whatever. And because he thought I was going to make a show. And when I got there, this woman came up to me, who turned out to be the woman that he was with. And she was like, oh, so you're, such and such a son. And I was like, yeah. I was like, I'm just here to meet him. I'm not here to cause a scene, you know what I mean? And he came back and he gave me a hug, and it was awkward. But so my dad at that time was a community organizer, but he was also working at a school in Washington Heights that was failing, and they needed, they were looking for teacher assistants. And he was like, oh, I hear that you're looking for a job, because any man with a guilty conscience, was the first thing that they go to. It's money, right? Like they figure, oh, let me woo you with money. And I needed a job at that point, man, because I was a college sophomore, and college is expensive, and I was tired of being broke. So I took the interview, and I started to work at the Bell Foundation. And then so I was being a teacher's assistant. And the one thing that I learned was that I had no idea what was going on with my kids outside of school. I had them from 2:00 to 5:30, and I had no idea what was happening outside that was impacting them academically. And so I went and I got my bachelor's in business, and I was looking for a job to help me pay my student loans because the TA money wasn't coming in. And my mentor at the time was like, do you want to run your own school? And I was 23 at the time, and I had never had a grown-up job, right? And a grown-up job where I was making a salary with benefits. I had never had that. I didn't know what the hell that was. And I took the job, man, and I oversaw 2 schools that were failing. I brought them out of receivership at 23 years old. I was able to figure out how to get my kids to perform better academically and knock their tests out of the park. But again, I still didn't know how their home lives was impacting them. So I decided to become a social worker, and I met with this woman who is she's the daughter of Richard Blumenthal, who's actually a senator in the White House now, in a senator now. And she said to me, she was like, I'm going to be very frank with you. We need a man of color that can speak Spanish. And she was like, I don't care about your education. I care about if you're committed to these kids. And this was working in Harlem. And I said, yeah, absolutely, I can do it. And again, I had never been a social worker before. And she even said to me, she was like, if you ever tell anybody I said that, I will absolutely deny it to the fullest. And to this day, when I tell this story, because I've told this story on the campaign trail, I've told it when I've met people, if people call her as a reference, she absolutely denies the story. But that's what she told me. She said that she needed, because there were so many kids, and again, so many white kids, Asian kids, Hispanic kids, black kids that didn't have positive male role models. And she was like, can you do this work? And I said, yeah. I can do this work. And I did that for 4 years, man. Like, and it was great. Like, we started a youth leadership academy and got our 16 and 17-year-olds to graduate on time. And it was great work. And then I realized, I was like, I don't know where the money's going. Like, how are we not able to afford these things that all these kids need? And so then I started a program from scratch, and I started meeting with stakeholders, and I started doing that part. And then I said, well, I need to know what the other side looks like, right? The undocumented side, the kids that come here and their parents aren't with them. And so then I started working with undocumented immigrants when I came down to DC. And then I did foster care, the kids that just got taken out of their homes, and how do we get them back? And then I ran for office, because that's when I realized that ultimately it all comes down to who makes these decisions. And too often we have people in power in this country who have never walked in those shoes, who don't know what it's like to be poor, who don't know what it's like to sit there and have an eviction notice on their door. I do. I was 14 years old when we had an eviction notice on our door, and my mom ripped it down before I could see it, thinking that I didn't see it because she didn't want me to freak out. And my mom got it done and figured out how to do it. A lot of people in power right now don't know what that's like. A lot of people in power don't know what it's like to only have $5 and see your mom go to the supermarket to then spend money on the little bit that she could, right? Like, and it's one of those, and those stories permeate skin color, they permeate racial lines, they permeate, like they go through all those things, right? Because there's a white kid in Kentucky who's having the same issue as the same thing as a black kid in Maryland. It's the same thing. And so, I mean, now I'm in that process of getting into that arena, but doing social services, man, was always something that, like, I found myself gradually building on. No matter how much I tried to run from it, no matter how much I was like, oh, no, this is too stressful, I can't do it, I found myself gradually building on wanting to do that and wanting to help people.
Awesome. That's amazing, man. That's really, really dope. And so you talked about running for office. Like, what was the final? Because I mean, I think a lot of people in your position at times probably think about, running for office as an option, or maybe, you sound like you've been somebody that's always been involved and trying to help people and be involved in your community. But what was that final thing that told you, like, okay, I need to finally make this happen. Like, I need to do this. Because that's a big thing, like actually committing to run for office, whatever office you're running for. I mean, right. You're basically putting yourself out there for the world or your community or whoever to see, you know what I mean? And to scrutinize in a lot of ways. So what was the final? What was the final thing that made that okay, I gotta do this?
Man, so you know what? I wish that I could say that it was one final thing, but it was probably like 6 or 7 things, right? So when I was 25, my brother was assaulted by 6 NYPD police officers, and that wow. And it was a really crazy time for my family, and so that. At 25, I mean, I'm 34 now, and I ran for office last year when I was 33. I'll be 34 in a month. But so that was one, and then seeing my mom have to lose her food stamps because I was going to a traditional school. And at that time, because of the Welfare Act, they felt that, you had to go to one of their approved programs, or you had to come work for the food stamps that they were giving your parents. And my mom was like, no, he's in college. He's going to graduate. That's all we're doing. So like that. And that happened when I was 20. And, not having my dad in my life. And my dad skirted responsibility for years. So that was big. But if I had to point to one final thing, and a lot of people like to point to the election of Donald Trump as like the final straw for a lot of people. And again, I can't knock whatever your final straw is. But for me, I grew up in New York. So Donald Trump being a racist and a bigot wasn't surprising for people that paid attention, right. Or wasn't surprising for people that grew up in New York. But for me, it was the fact that there were so many people that took umbrage with the fact that we had a black man in office. And I was like, man, like this is the first time that I'm able to, that me, myself, as a man of color, am able to look at the White House and see somebody that looks like me, right? And then now we have this woman who, again, flawed or not or whatever, was an incredibly qualified woman. And now you have this woman come forward, and a lot of women are seeing themselves in that. Like, wow, this is the first time that I'm able to see a woman actually be a viable candidate. And to have that piss off so many people that they elect a bigot and a racist, I think all of that made me feel exactly how seeing my brother get dragged through the mud by the justice system and seeing my mom, have to decide between me going to college and her being able to eat or being able to provide for our family, right? Like those are things that absolutely stick with you. And the one thing that I will say to anybody that wants to run for office, I'm going to tell you to do it, man, because listen, I ran here in Montgomery County. Montgomery County is incredibly liberal for certain things and incredibly conservative for a lot of things. But Montgomery County is an incredibly affluent county. Like we are, I think, like the fifth by population size. We're top 5 in like population size. There are many facets to Montgomery County. And when I ran, I was the only male candidate of color in my race. And I can't tell you how many times people came up to me afterwards and were like, "Oh my God, you're so articulate. I can't believe you're so articulate." And I thought it was the wildest thing to say to somebody, because I was like, "Did you think I was not? Did you think I've been there?" Right. You get it, right? Like where people make these comments like, "Man, you talk a little white." Excuse me.
Yeah.
It blows your mind. But realistically, man, it's one of those things where all those things came together, and I decided that enough was enough. And I decided that my county, where I was raising, and we had found out that my wife was pregnant around that time, and we had to make a decision that it was like, listen, if we're going to raise our daughter here, then we need to contribute to what this county looks like. We need to build it brick by damn brick. And there's a lot of people so my friend ended up winning. My friend Andrew ended up winning. And he ended up, he won I think he had 8,000 votes or whatever. And Andrew's great. Andrew, however, is a white man. And Andrew's a white man who didn't steer away from talking about racial justice. Right? But because it was coming from a white man, white people take that a little different. They just do. It's just the nature of the business. But one of the things that Andrew made clear was his embrace of me as a new person, because we had just moved here. And they were like, "Oh, who's this person?" Mind you, I spent my summers down here, right? So I knew Montgomery County well. But this is my first time running down here, first time living down here. And they were like, "Well, who's this stranger coming on?" And Andrew made sure that they understood how qualified I was, which now then people, now I'm helping with an immigrant project, and I'm helping to organize communities around a police bill that they're trying to pass. And I'm able to still do the things that I want to do. And I'll run again, obviously. But it's hard, man. But anybody that listens, run as you are. Do not feel like you have to change who you are, because people are going to judge you regardless. But you need to stand in your truth and stand in your power.
Absolutely. What was the hardest thing about running? What was because I think we all have this perception of politics, small or big. Obviously, we have obviously Washington, and we all have our own. We have our own opinions and feelings towards everything that goes on in Washington, but just even at a local level, I think we all have this kind of perception of who politicians are, what it entails, the job. What was the hardest thing that you found in just running for office? What was the thing that was like, wow, I never would have thought that this was this bad or this hard, or is easy for that matter?
Right. So I'll start with the easy part. I think the easy part was telling my story, because I'm not like this conversation that you and I are having. I've had this conversation on the trail before, right? I've had this conversation where people are like, "Oh, so what was it like growing up in a single parent home?" And then I can tell them, right? Because again, I'm not ashamed of it. My mom is great. She calls me every day. She calls more to talk to my daughter than she does to me, but she calls every day. She calls every day. But it's one of those things where my mom and I had a really bad relationship when I was a kid, and then now as we've gotten older, we've built this mutual respect, because I have my own family, right? And as you can attest to this as a father, we take care of our families, and we make sure that our families are okay. And we make sure all these things. So that was the easy part. The easy part was telling the story. The hardest part, I think, man, the hardest part was telling the story, because there were people that would cast doubt on your story. And I don't know about you, man, but I'm very territorial about my story. I'm very territorial about what I've been through to be here. Right? By all intents and purposes, and this is no hyperbole, this is no BS, I should be dead, right? Because I grew up in the Bronx, in a really dangerous neighborhood. And, my mom, I remember getting punched one day over a Yankee hat and having my coat stolen in the winter. These things were real to me. And then now I live in an affluent neighborhood, like I mentioned, and I live in a suburb, and it's great. But it's also, I know my daughter's not going to go through a lot of the same things that I went through. And that's okay. I'm really glad she's not. But my mom did the best she can. And I think that was so hard, because again, while I was able to stand in my truth and tell my story, I found it incredibly difficult to have people look at my story as if it wasn't true, as if it wasn't authentic. And again, I'll make up something else. I'll tell you that, I went to private school my whole life, if that makes you feel better. But my truth is my truth. I went to a theater school. I acted. I took dance. I did off-Broadway plays. I was a very creative person. I did rap. I battle rapped outside my high school. I then became a rapper because I thought that's what I wanted to do. And I was always really good at it. And then I decided to do background work. So Man on the Ledge with Sam Worthington, I'm in the background of that. I got paid $3,500 to do that. So those things were things that we just kind of had to do. But there were so many people I met a lot of really, really great people, but there were some people that, like I alluded to, even with the, oh my God, you sound so articulate. There were so many people that they casted pity on me because because in their bubble, they didn't understand how it could be that bad. And I found myself having to defend my story. And so it's a double-edged sword. On one hand, the story was easy to tell. It was much harder to have to defend it because it was my story.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you're running again. If there's one thing that you could do differently next time around, just kind of because as people, we always tend to analyze ourselves, or most adult people, I think, tend to, analyze and self-analyze and see what they did right, what they did wrong.
Right.
What do you think is something that, like, the next time you lived it, you learned it, and it's something that you're going to do and do better, or maybe improve upon, that you probably, and it's not just that you probably did wrong, it's just that you probably, a rookie mistake. Next time I know the game better, I'm more experienced. Like, what's something that you could take from this past experience and bring it on with you as you run next time?
So you're talking about, what is my Sam Darnold don't throw the ball in the flat to Bilal Powell in week 1? Like, what's that moment that I'm like,
what's that moment? Yeah, exactly.
For me, man, honestly, it's don't be afraid to ask for money, because running for office is expensive. And I was very uncomfortable asking people for money. Like, I would go door to door with, and again, I had, like I mentioned, Joe was my social media manager. So he would, him and another friend of mine, Daniel Mosher, they would create my graphics, right? So my graphics for Instagram, my graphics for Facebook ads, they would do all of that for free. Like, I wouldn't have to pay them for that. So they would do that, right? So they would take care of that. And then I would go out to door knock with my campaign manager, with my volunteer coordinator, like people who had volunteered their time, and I didn't have to pay them at all. And I would go and meet people and shake their hands and all this stuff, and it was great. But at the end of it, my campaign manager would go, why didn't you ask her for a donation? I was like, I don't feel right asking her for a donation. But here's what, so I need to get away from not being afraid to do that, because what I've found even now, so what's happening now is there's a gentleman whose name is Casey Anderson, who is the Montgomery County Planning Board chair. Now, that position pays $207,000 a year for starters, which is kind of insane to me, because I'm like, wow, like, you really need 6 figures in order to do what's right. But sure, whatever works for you. But one of the biggest issues that we're having now in Montgomery County is that our schools are overcrowded. And a lot of that conversation has turned into racial equity for families of color who are on the outskirts of the county and don't get the same resources. And Mr. Anderson is part of that issue, because he's rubber stamped all kinds of development through the county. So we're talking about, like, high rises, because usually what happens is a person that wants to build here, they come with a proposal. We give them a placeholder, because they have to account for the fact that now people will live in these buildings, right? So it's like, listen, like, if you're gonna build here, we need you to fund a school that we're going to build here in order for people to be able to attend here. So when the budgeting process comes, we give them a placeholder. Then when it comes time to cash in on that placeholder and tell the building to fork up the money, the property managers to fork up the money, Mr. Anderson has opted to forego that. He's like, no, it's fine. The building's up. We don't need that money from them. When realistically we do, because now we have our schools that are overcrowded. Our teachers are underpaid. It's crazy. So I'm being recruited to challenge him. I'm very much considering it, because one thing that I do know as an organizer and as a social worker is that if you're struggling at home, there's no way you're going to do well academically. And a lot of people move to Montgomery County because even when I moved here, we were a top 2 school district in the country. And over the last 3 years, we've dropped from 2 to 5, then from 5 to 7, and which again is still great, but there's a reason why we're dropping. And part of it is because families can't afford to live here. So if you're a parent that has to work 2 or 3 jobs in order to be able to afford to live here, how are you helping your kid with homework? How are you attending PTA meetings? How are you making your voice heard? So I'm considering challenging him, which is why I said my plan was to run again in 2022. However, I'm being recruited to run against him now, and I'm considering. So I will say that. And then I'm leaning towards yes. But I think the one thing that is bad is not being afraid to ask for money. And what I found is the people that have voted for me have sent me emails that say, hey, I will donate to your campaign the next time you run. So in theory, if every person that voted for me donates $10, suddenly I have a war chest, quote unquote, of like $200,000, which is great. That's an insane amount of money to start with, right? Because realistically, I raised for my first run, I raised $12,000, which again, I was able to, and I'm a social worker, so I know how to use money. But I was able to get business cards, pay my website, buy postcards that we handed out, buy buttons, stickers, like all these things. But a race like this, and this is a local race, you need money, and you need to not be afraid to ask for money, because this is still a job. You're still trying to figure out a way to help people, but you're trying to figure out how to do it in the most economical way. But you need money. You can't. It's very hard to win without money. Like, one of the reasons that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez beat Joe Crowley is because she raised a ton of money. Like, she did an amazing job, and part of it was because she wasn't afraid to ask for it. And I think you have to be willing to do that. And I think that's a stumbling point for a lot of young folks, not even young people of color, but young folks in general. Young folks in general are scared to ask for money. They're scared to.
Because of the negative connotation about it. And everybody has this kind of cynical view of politics and it being a money grab. And in a lot of ways it is, but unfortunately that's the game. You know what I mean? It's like one day we'll be able to change the game where we take money out of politics totally. But right now, this is the system that we have. And, you know what I'm saying? Money is a big part of it. So, yeah, I can see that. I can definitely see where that would be an issue. Well, hey, we got some political news on the podcast today. Is considering it. So for those in Montgomery County, I hope you guys are listening. Hey, man, I don't live in Montgomery County. I'm all the way in the Pacific Northwest. But you got my vote, man. So definitely.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Keep me posted on that, and I will gladly contribute to the campaign any way I can. So,
thank you. I appreciate that, brother, for sure.
Absolutely, man. We definitely need more people like you in office. That's for sure. So, yeah, man. I'm not trying to bore the public for those of you that are not interested in the political aspect of this, but I think it's a hell of a story, and I think it's something that I think a lot of people will resonate with and could contribute. And who knows? Maybe somebody's listening to this or will listen to this episode when it's up, that might be in your same boat or might be considering running. Exactly. And this is something that they need to kind of give them a pat on the back or a pep talk or ease them into doing it. So seeing that you, a regular guy like yourself with a family, a story, a background, was able to do it, anybody else can do it too. So you just have to be committed, dedicated, and of course, like you said, be able to and be willing to ask for money, because at the end of the day, like you said, it's a job, it's a business. You're trying to do something here and it takes money. Unfortunately, that's the way the world works. Money is everything. So, yeah. So let's transition over to our Jets though. Just a little bit recap for me. The off season, has it got, we and you have kind of talked online on Twitter and stuff, and we've shared our thoughts on the Jets and what they've done and things that we agree with and don't agree with. First and foremost, just kind of give me a rundown of the off season. Has everything gone the way that you would have liked it to have gone? Did you like some of the moves? Just kind of give me an overall rundown of the off season as a whole.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll start with what I did like. I love that we signed Le'Veon Bell. I think that a lot of people have forgotten just how good he is, and that typically happens with recency bias, right? Like if you haven't seen a guy play, you suddenly think like, oh my God, he's not good. And that's how we get takes like, is Alvin Kamara a top 5 running back in the league? And it's like, well, is he? Le'Veon Bell's still probably better than him. But so signing Le'Veon Bell is huge. I think that's such a big move for Sam Darnold and such a big move for the team, who for a long time has lacked star power. Like we had Darrelle Revis, best corner to ever play the game, arguably the best defensive player for a good stretch, man, like 3-4 years. And then, he tears his knee and then you trade him to Tampa, then he goes to New England, wins a ring. But this is a team that has lacked star power. And so now you've added a star in Le'Veon Bell. I like the Jamison Crowder move. I think that's a really good move. I like that we, traded for Osemele from the Raiders. I think that's a really good move. You put him on the offensive line, bring some of that Nigerian strength. My friend Dan's Nigerian, and he's very happy about that. But you bring a guy that can protect Sam Darnold and create some holes for Le'Veon Bell, which is huge, right? I think that's going to be big. The one thing that I will say that I didn't particularly care for was the ignoring of the edge position, because, again, I think you need an edge rusher, but I also think that lets me know exactly which way they're going draft-wise. So you need an edge rusher, but not going for one in free agency. That lets me know what you're trying to do. It also seems like once Anthony Barr pivoted and went back to Minnesota, it seems like the team didn't have another move. Like they didn't plan accordingly for that. They thought Barr was locked and that was it. I really like the CJ Mosley signing. I think that it does probably spell the end for Darren Lee, but CJ Mosley is a stud at the inside linebacker position. Can cover, can rush the passer, great at stopping the run. it's going to be interesting to see how Greg Williams uses him, because I did feel like the Ravens didn't use him as a pass rusher as much as they should have, and I think Greg Williams will. Brian Poole is okay. A lot of people like to say that he's better than Buster Screen. I actually think he's kind of just like Buster Screen. So I don't see him as this huge upgrade. I don't like the fact that they paid Darryl Roberts as a starting cornerback. That bothers me. I wish that we would have taken a flyer on like another corner, because Tremaine Johnson, I mean, guys like you and I were coming off the street and burning him on fly routes. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, maybe he was hurt. No, I think what happened is I think he got fat because he got paid and then decided like, oh, yeah, no, now I don't need to try. I think he showed up to camp overweight. It's why you saw a better Tremaine Johnson the second half of the year, because he got into shape. The hope is that he shows up in shape, because you're paying him too much money to be burned by the, undrafted free agents of the world. It just doesn't make much sense. But going into the draft, honestly, man, I feel okay. I didn't like Adam Gase as the hire. To be honest, I don't. I think that he was okay in Miami. He wasn't great, but he wasn't good either. I worry that because him and McCagnon are now on different time frames, right? Because McCagnon is now entering year 5, and this is year 1 for Gase. I now wonder how it's going to turn out. But if I had to grade the offseason, I'd give it a B, because any offseason that you land Le'Veon Bell, I think is huge.
Yeah, I agree with you on most of the takes. Obviously, I agree with you. I was a little bit on the fence on the Le'Veon Bell thing, not because I don't think he's great. Obviously, we all know the type of player that Le'Veon Bell is. I just feel like baggage and having a year off and all the other things that come with Le'Veon Bell. I just wondered if he was a Tremaine Johnson type, and we'll know. We'll find out. We'll find out very quickly if he's that guy. Right. I've always worried about Le'Veon once he got his money, if he'd be one of those guys that got fat and just resting on his laurels. We'll see. Yeah. And the year off kind of concerns me. I mean, this is a guy that hasn't played football in a year. What kind of shape is he in? From all reports and everything that's been reported so far, he looks good. He looks in shape. I've seen the pictures. He looks like the normal Le'Veon Bell. So I think we're good there. But we'll see. But yeah, that was my only.
It's also different when you get hit the first time, right? Like I think that's going to be the key.
Right.
Like
that was the hesitancy that I had. Yeah, that was the hesitancy that I had with Le'Veon. But of course, I mean, you can't debate signing a multiple time, Pro Bowl, all pro level type running back. I mean, it's just, it makes too much sense. I love the CJ Mosley signing. I would have loved the Anthony Barr signing. I do agree with you that the Anthony Barr signing, or the lack of the signing of Anthony Barr, it did kind of feel like a gut punch to the team. And it felt like they never really recovered in free agency. Like it kind of felt like they had put all their eggs in the Anthony Barr basket. And once he decided to go back to Minnesota, it just kind of felt like the team didn't have a plan. It just kind of was like, oh shit, what do we do now? Like our plan in free agency was Le'Veon, CJ Mosley, and Anthony Barr. And once Anthony Barr turned us down, it kind of felt like they didn't have a pivot move. So I agree with you on that. I would say I'm a little upset they didn't go after one of the big centers in free agency, Morse or Paradis. That's a disappointing aspect for me. I know Paradis, I don't know, based on what you want to believe, the Jets never really were interested, or he wasn't interested in the Jets. Who knows with this stuff? But it just seemed like there was never really dialogue between the two sides. So that was a little disappointing. Same thing with Mitch Morse. So I would have liked them to be a little bit more aggressive on the offensive line, mostly on the center position, because I think that they definitely need an upgrade in that position. I mean, again, I would, if I was grading the offseason moves, I would give it a B2. I think Anthony Barr would have.
What did you think of the Jamison Crowder signing? What did you think of Jamison Crowder?
I liked it. I liked it. It was okay. Like it was okay. It was one of those moves that, it's not going to wow you. It doesn't move the needle per se. But it's a good, solid football move. When he's healthy, he's a very good player. Key with him is staying healthy. And he's a guy that's had some health concerns over, definitely last year and in the years prior. He's had a little bit of injury issues, but when he plays, when he's out there, he's a very, very good, solid, slot receiver. So yeah, I like the move. Every move that they've made, I've liked. I'm with you. I did not love the Adam Gase hire. It's grown on me now a little bit. Just because, we've had some time to kind of let it dwell on us, and it is what it is. They're not going to fire the guy now after the fact, so it's
right.
Gotta deal with it. It just kind of felt like that to me, though. It just kind of felt like he was like their fourth choice. That's what it really felt like. And it just kind of felt like they settled on Adam Gase because he's kind of the only offensive guy out there that's, worth giving a shot to. Like, I thought this was the most important coaching hire they've had in 20 years since the Parcells hire.
Yep.
I thought that this is a hire that you need to go big or go home. The first guy that I wanted was Jim Harbaugh. I don't know how likely that would have been. I know people are iffy on Jim Harbaugh. I still think Jim Harbaugh is a hell of a coach. Michigan struggles aside. I think he's a hell of a coach. He's a guy that came within a fourth down of winning a Super Bowl. So I think bringing him to New York, letting him work with Sam Darnold was a home run for me. Let's just say he wasn't interested or whatever. I think you pivot to Mike McCarthy. I would have liked Mike McCarthy. I know the Mike McCarthy is kind of getting bashed out there in the articles and all that.
Right.
Listen, he's a Super Bowl winning head coach. He wanted to coach the Jets. The guy's been in the playoffs.
And Aaron Rodgers is kind of a wang.
Exactly. Like, let's not act like Aaron Rodgers didn't bear some faults in that situation. So, so I was all in on the Mike McCarthy hire. I never loved the Baylor coach. I'm like, you're bringing in a rookie coach, guy who's coached at Baylor. I know he's got NFL ties, but I wasn't high on that. And then some of the other candidates, I didn't want them to touch Cliff Kingsbury. So some of the other hires weren't uninspiring. I guess Gase was the best of the bunch, I guess. So that's what's kind of made it grown on me. But yeah, I'm with you. I didn't love the Adam Gase hire. But it's grown on me.
I worry about us as Jet fans collectively rationalizing it. It's a Knicks fan level kind of rationalization when it comes to things, because we rationalize anything, man. I hear you. I'm with you though. Like, I was like, man, Adam Gase, hell no. And I think for me, even the Le'Veon Bell thing, I rationalized that very quickly. Again, I like Le'Veon Bell, but a lot of the same concerns you had, I was like, man, that first time he gets hit, it's probably going to hurt. He's probably going to take his money and leave. The Adam Gase thing, though, I think you're right. I mean, they're not going to fire him. They're not. They're not going to fire him. They're going to let this ride out, and we just have to hope that it works out. But we Jet fans, Knicks fans, and Met fans, nobody rationalizes things like those three fanhoods. Nobody. And Laker fans.
Yeah, and I'm a fan of all three, so I'm very much with you on that one. What move were you surprised they didn't make? We talked about the center position not being addressed, but is there any other moves that you felt like they probably should have addressed in free agency somewhere? I know you talked about pass rusher as well. I thought that they should have. I'm surprised they let Roberts go, Andre Roberts go. I thought he had. I love the contribution that he brought to the team last year. I'm surprised. I'm also surprised at letting Meyer walk. Yeah. I know he kind of got overpaid by who was it? Carolina, I believe.
Or Seattle, I think it was.
Yeah, one of those. But yeah, Jason Meyer had been a very, very good kicker for you, and to let those two special team guys go was a little bit of a surprise. And also the Morris Claiborne, the lack of interest in bringing back Morris Claiborne or bringing back a solid corner to pair with Tremaine Johnson. I know Darryl Roberts is a guy that they have high hopes for, but talk about that. Is there any other move that you would have liked to see them do, or a guy that you would have liked them to see them keep?
I mean, every single one that you mentioned was tough. For me, it was not being in on Justin Houston because I always felt like with all the money that you had, you didn't want to have to go into the draft and feel like you have to reach for need, right? And granted, I think had they sealed the deal with Anthony Barr, you add him, I would have really liked that signing. So you add Anthony Barr, I think maybe there's more of a chance that you then take somebody else or whatever the case may be. And clearly they had a plan, like you mentioned, but not signing Justin Houston, who wouldn't have prevented you from drafting good Josh Allen if that's the route that you wanted to go with. So I find that very alarming. I find the fact that Darren Lee is still on the team kind of alarming because it's one of those things where, just take the 5th round pick. You traded one for Asamele already. Take a 5th round pick or whatever it is. I also think like, while I like the Jamison Crowder signing, there's a lot of pass rushing talent available. And like, you have Frank Clark, who, you know, with his DB pass, I highly doubt McCagnon takes him. But then you still have Jadeveon Clowney available, who hasn't signed his tender he hasn't signed the franchise tag with the Texans, and McCagnon scouted him. So why haven't you called them? And again, we don't know, but by all intents and purposes, he hasn't called them to say, hey, would it be a D Ford like trade where we offer you a 2020 second? The fact that they weren't in on D Ford is also surprising, right? Because here's a guy who the last 2 out of 3 years has been a really good pass rusher, and the Jets have had a black hole at edge rusher, man, for years. Like, it's just nobody to get to the quarterback consistently. And the one thing that Jamal Adams asked you for was dogs. So go get him some. Now, again, I think that this does mean that they're going to lean towards one of my favorite players in the draft, probably my favorite player in the draft, which, again, maybe it's fine. Maybe I'm panicking prematurely, but I find it incredibly alarming that you didn't sign an edge rusher and you didn't sign a center. Again, depending on who you believe, like you mentioned, but no Paratus, no Morse. I don't get it. I really don't. So those two positions by far, because you have a second-year quarterback, you saw what a bad center can do to him, and then now you don't have a game-changing pass rusher yet.
I agree. I completely forgot about the Justin Houston one, but I was fuming about that, especially the money that he ended up getting. I was just like, really? This was chump change. Like, you could have easily added him to the mix, and you get a guy who, when healthy, is still one of the best pass rushers in the league. I didn't understand that at all. I really didn't. So let's transition over to the draft. This is your area of expertise. Yeah. The draft. Who's a guy that? Well, I'll start with this. Obviously, a lot of the names have been thrown out there. The Jets have the third pick. Do you see them as what's your philosophy? Do you think they should trade back? Do you think they should stay at 3? What's your philosophy first and foremost with the Jets on that?
So position? In an ideal world, I'm trading back because I think the Jets still have a lot of holes and they need more picks in order to fill them. So I'm definitely a proponent of trading back usually. However, I think that there are 3 blue chip guys. And one of them you're not going to take because you're not going to take another interior defensive lineman. And I'm not talking about Quentin Williams. I'm talking about Ed Oliver. So you're not going to take him. And then you have Nick Bosa and Josh Allen. And Nick Bosa has gotten a lot of flack recently for his, less than stellar social media posts that he had to take down because the 49ers told him that they were going to take him, and et cetera,
That's
et cetera.
Being kind.
And
less than stellar.
Right. Less than stellar social media stuff. But then you have good Josh Allen from Kentucky, who has gotten better every year, coming off a monster year, 21 sacks in the SEC, which you cannot make up. There's no way to fake that. And the year before, he had 10.5. He's gotten better every year. I think that this is the year that, and also because there's a lack of quarterback quality in this draft. Like, I believe Kyler Murray's only worth the number 1 pick to Arizona. If there was another team up there, I don't think Kyler Murray's even in the discussion. Mm-hmm. But I think because Kingsbury knows him, I think that it's one of those things where you prop up the guy that knows your system. But it also could very be likely that the Cardinals do not take him and they go Bosa, and then the Niners go Quentin Williams because they have a hole in the middle of the defense and they traded for D Ford. And then you take good Josh Allen because he's going to be a 15, 16 sack guy at the next level who can cover also. And that's kind of the underrated part of his game, is that not only can he rush the passer, he has a great first step, but he also can cover too. So you take him at 3. So in an ideal draft where there were at least a couple other quarterbacks in the mix, like say the Jets had the 3rd pick in the draft next year with such a draft, with a draft class where you have Herbert and Fromm and Tua, right? Or even the year after, if you had the 2nd pick where Lawrence is finally able to declare from Clemson, then okay. But this year, like, Dwayne Haskins, I think, is probably going to be the best one because he has prototypical size, can make every throw, but he's only started 1 year, so you have to worry about that. Then you have Tyree Jackson from Buffalo, who I think is really, really good and has things that you really can't teach, but also he gets hit a lot and he scrambles a lot, and I think you worry about that. Will Grier has a strong arm, and I think I liked him all year, but he's not really being talked up as one of the top quarterbacks. And then you have Drew Lock and Daniel Jones, who I really don't like in the top half of the first round, but they're being talked up as guys that are going to go at 10 and at 17, et cetera, et cetera. The Jets are just in a really weird spot, man, because they're picking 3rd in a draft that doesn't have a clear-cut top quarterback. If this was a normal draft, like if this was last year, and again, they were picking 3, but say they started the year at 3, the Jets could have theoretically traded back to 6 and still gotten one of the top quarterbacks, right? They could have gotten Rosen, or they could have maybe taken Lamar Jackson if they really wanted to swing the dice like that. Who knew that the Browns were going to take Baker Mayfield? The Giants would be stupid enough to pass up on one of the quarterbacks to take Saquon Barkley, et cetera, et cetera. But in an ideal world, I would trade back, get more picks, and land a bunch of blue chip guys. But I don't see that happening at all. I think they stay at 3 and they take Josh Allen.
What's your favorite player in the draft outside of, you talked up Josh Allen, a guy that you love a lot, but just, outside of the Jets, just in general, who's your favorite player that you've covered, that you've researched, in this whole draft lead up?
Yeah, so I'll give you two. Ed Oliver, who I think hasn't been talked about enough. He's the number 2 player on my board. Yeah, he has not been talked about enough, and he's a guy that was good all year, and he was good last year. The day of the draft on turnonthejets.com, my top 300 board will be out, and during the draft, I'll add in comments and stuff of where they went and stuff like that. So make sure to bookmark that when it drops. But Ed Oliver is one of them who, again, insane first step, incredibly athletic for a man his size. A man that is almost 300 pounds should not be moving like that. I'm a WWE fan, as are you, and I know we're used to seeing big men like that move, but Ed Oliver should not be moving as quick as he's moving off the line. And then another guy is Brian Burns, man. I really like Brian Burns. I think that he's probably, as a pure pass rusher, not encompassing all the other things that go into being a defensive member, but as a pure pass rusher, he's probably the best player in this class in terms of getting to the quarterback, even better than Nick Bosa. And then I'll give you a third guy, DK Metcalf, man, who, again, if you were going to roll the dice on a trade back and take somebody with the insane potential, you go with this kid who's an athletic freak. The film doesn't lie. He's not a body catcher. He's all hands. And he's still developing. He's still young enough to craft that ceiling. He reminds me a lot of Terrell Owens, who, again, T.O.'s a Hall of Famer. He should have been in the Hall of Fame years ago. You're talking about a kid who developed into one of the premier receivers in the league. DK Metcalf can be like that. So those three guys are guys that I really, really like, and I'm interested to see. And the hope is that they don't go to AFC East teams and they go somewhere else. But I really think Metcalf is going to end up in Buffalo. And Josh Allen can't overthrow 6'5", 230 pounds.
One would think, right? One would think.
One would think.
So who's the guy that that gets a lot of love, a lot of hype, that you're just not seeing it? You're just like, I'm not there with this guy. Who's that guy?
Rashawn Gary, hands down. Hands down. Hands down, man. I watched a lot of Michigan games, and a lot of people like to point out to the fact that he was hurt, but even when he was healthy, he wasn't very good. He got beat off his blocks a lot. He doesn't have a lot of people wanted to say when he was being mocked to the Jets, a lot of people were like, oh, here he's Vernon Golston. Listen, man, Vernon Golston was at least productive at Ohio State. Rashawn Gary can't rush the passer like Vernon Golston can, and so I refuse to compare the two. I think that's insulting to Vernon Golston. I think Rashawn Gary pisses me off, man, and he would piss me off if he's the pick, because he's undersized, he gets pushed back a lot, and putting him next to Leo Williams, who's the king of the almost sack, and putting him next to Henry Anderson, who can probably get to the quarterback. But again, Rashawn Gary is the guy that I would absolutely scream at my TV if he's the pick.
Any other guy that just gets a lot of love, a lot of draft buzz, and you're just like, I don't see it?
Jawan Taylor from Florida. I don't know why. I don't know why. And I know a lot of people talk him up as the best offensive lineman in this class. And you know what it is, man? And I'll tell you straight up, I worry about guys that didn't do it all year, and then once we reach the offseason, January or February, suddenly they're talked up as the best guys. Why? The film didn't lie to you. The film was what it was. What made you change your mind? And nobody can offer an opinion. I'll tell you. So before the college football season started, I had Greg Little as the best offensive lineman, followed by Jonah Williams, then Trey Adams from Washington, and then I had Dillard, and I didn't even have Taylor in my top 32. I think he was in my top 32. So and then I watched, and Jonah overtook Greg because I thought Greg was a little too light on his feet. And again, you could be like that if you're DeBrickashaw Ferguson, but I don't think Greg Little's that polished, right? So Jonah overtook him, and then Dillard overtook Little. I still liked Adams, but he broke his foot at Washington. They said he was going to come back. But Jawan Taylor wasn't a guy that jumped out at me. So now that we've seen them in shorts and, in shorts and sneakers, why on earth would that change my mind? You're not going to play on Sundays in shorts and sneakers. That's not going to happen. And I think he's the guy that I hear constantly talked up at number 3 that really pisses me off on the offensive side of the ball. Rashawn Gary is the guy on the defensive side of the ball that I just absolutely do not want the Jets to take.
Interesting. Well, it should be. I can't believe it's almost 2 weeks. It feels like the draft season is just too long. I really wanted to be shorter. I don't know. As a fan, it's just it just takes forever sometimes with these drafts. This year's felt a little shorter than most years, but I mean, I don't know. I felt like last year. I think it's with the anticipation of the quarterbacks. Last year just felt like forever, yo.
Right.
It was just damn, let's just get here already. But no, it's my favorite time of the year. I love the draft, and we'll definitely be following, man. Hey, Dalbin, man, I know you got to run, but before you do, first of all, thank you for joining us and being a guest on the
Thank you, man.
No doubt, man. No doubt. Before you go, man, use this time to plug your social media, everything Turn On Jets, all the political stuff, everything you want people to find you and find out about you. Go ahead and plug it, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. No, and again, thank you so much for having me on. I'm really glad that we could do this. It was a great conversation. You guys can follow me on Twitter at DA_Osorio. Understand my Twitter account is not for the faint of heart. So you should be fair warned. Another thing that I really want to plug is a good friend of mine, Sean, and I launched A Shade Darker 3 months ago. It is a publishing company aimed to essentially add voices to the creative landscape. And we are looking for submissions. If you have short stories, poems, novels, screenplays, anything. We were able to secure a grant from the Robert Johnson Foundation to do the work that we're doing. So if you guys have anything out there that you want to send our way, feel free to hit me up on Twitter. I'll send you the submission email. We're currently editing our first anthology, working on our first feature film, which is actually really, really cool. So the script is being worked on right now. We're also releasing a poetry picture book from one of the authors that sent us our stuff. So yeah, we're constantly looking for stuff. Feel free to reach out to me. If you want to find my football stuff, turnonthejets.com. I write there all the time. Like I said, I'm the senior writer. I'm like the Scarface, but like the rapper version of not the you're going to come into our house and I'm going to have a ton of coke and guns lined up. I'm the rapper version of Third on the Jets. Exactly. But no, it's been a pleasure. Draft season. I'm the co-host of Draft Season, also the co-host of What's Your Point, which will be back in the fall. It's our version of PTI, or as we like to call PTT, pardon the turbulence. So look out for that. I also have a Medium page where I write about, stuff that's not just football. We're talking about, political stuff, et cetera, et cetera. So feel free to follow that. And honestly, I'm just incredibly humbled that to be on with you. And again, I look forward to being back on once we can, because we still got to talk about Endgame. We still got to talk about Game of Thrones. There's so much that we can talk about.
Oh yeah, definitely. An hour is not nearly enough.
An hour is not enough. But thank you so much for having me on, man.
Oh, no doubt, man. Like I said, I wanted to have you on for a while, and this is the pleasure's all mine, and we'll definitely have you back on because we got a lot of things to talk about on the political,
absolutely,
everything. So we'll definitely have you on, man. Dalbin, thank you so much for joining me, man. Have a happy, safe, blessed day, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much. You too, brother. All right.
All right, welcome back to the show. I'd like to thank Dalbin for being my guest this week on the podcast. Please make sure you subscribe to What's Your Point and Draft Season, all podcasts which are available on the Turn On the Jets podcast network, which is available anywhere where you can find podcasts, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, anywhere where you can find podcasts, you'll be able to find those podcasts. And also make sure you follow him on social media, man, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, anywhere where you can find him. He's there, so check it out. If you're a Montgomery County citizen, make sure you follow him and support him, man. He's a really good guy. We need more people like him with his background, his knowledge, his expertise, and his story in politics, man. So he's a really good guy, really insightful. I hope you guys just got a glimpse of that just by listening to this interview. If any of you listened to this interview, but if you did, I hope you guys got an insight of that. I really, really appreciate it. Had a great conversation with him, and I think he's a really great guy. And I think I think he's one of the people that we need in our elected offices. I really, really do. So go support him when he does officially announce that he's running again. So, go do that. But that's it for me this week. Thank you as always, guys, for supporting the podcast. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at @DManuelBrown, on Instagram at @DManuelBrown, Facebook Manuel Brown, and of course, Snapchat MannyBro15. You can follow the podcast at AGS Pod on Twitter, AGS Podcast on Instagram, Any Given Sunday on Facebook. Make sure you also become an AGS Nation member as well. Man, that's it. That's it. That's all the social media sites. Thank you as always for listening, for supporting the show. Without you guys, the listeners, there is no podcast. So once again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being the most important part of this podcast week in and week out. Hopefully you guys have a happy, safe, blessed week. This week is going to be a better week than my previous week. I know it, but just law of averages is going to be better, right? It has to be. No plane flights and no terrible United customer service. So that's a plus. But yeah, man, I hope you guys have a happy, safe, blessed week. Make sure you check out all the other podcasts on the Dead End Podcast Network as well. Dope shows, man. Go ahead and check those out. I am out of here. Shout out to Tiger Woods for winning the Masters. And I hope you guys have a happy, safe, blessed rest of your week. All right. Peace. Serious sound. man.